Today, we'll be talking about whether the labor shortage problem will ever end, and joining us to contribute to the conversation is Ira Wolfe. Welcome, Ira.
Yeah, the simple answer is it won't end. And I know a lot of your listeners will be very, very disappointed about that. This could be the first recession, if they qualify that as a recession. I know there's debate whether we're in a recession or not, but whether we are or not, we're in an economic slowdown. But this could be the first time since 1945, before most of the people probably listening are born, since 1945, that the GDP, that we would have a recession or an economic downturn, and that the unemployment rate did not rise in concert with that. So the economy falls, people lay off, they're out of jobs, companies cut back, and the unemployment rate typically goes up. In the US, the lowest unemployment rate in any of the 12 recessions since 1945 was 6.1%. In the US, we're currently at 3.6%, and the consensus is, and I'm not an economist, so I listen to the experts, but the consensus is among most experts that they expect that it will rise to about 4.6 or 4.7%, maybe 5%, but nobody's predicting it's going to go much higher than that. That's full employment. And so we're in what they call a job full downturn versus some of the listeners may be familiar with the jobless recovery. And we certainly faced that, after the Great Recession in 2007, 2008, the housing crisis. And then it took almost 10 years to really get back to that rapid pace. This is the opposite. This is a job full downturn. And that they're really not expecting this to go off. And, there was on LinkedIn, it was passing around about 2-3 weeks ago, that somebody wrote that many managers, they did a survey, many managers were looking almost optimistically toward a recession because it would ease the labor shortages. The graphic, this is the image, if you can visualize this, that really says why this is going to be different and this isn't going away. In the late 60s and early 70s, we had the baby boom. We had the baby boom before that, but the baby boomers were coming of age, including myself. We were entering the workforce. And every single year, there were 2.5 million new workers that were entering the workplace for a period of almost 8 to 10 years. Then in the 80s, we had a little bit of a downturn, economic downturn, but we had Gen X, and Gen X was only half as big as the baby boomers. So there were 76 million baby boomers. There was only 40 million Gen X. They entered the workforce, a little bit of a blip on the radar, but people were piling into the workforce. And then the economy's picked up again. So we had the dot-com boom, and then we had the early 2000s, and the millennials entered the workforce. And they struggled a little bit because the economy wasn't booming, but there was a lot of fresh blood. There was a lot of new people. 2.5 million people again were entering the workforce every single year. Then the economy picked up in the late 2015, 2016. We had the boom until the pandemic hit. And the one thing that people don't realize is that when they look at this graph, we had a peak and we had a peak, and all of a sudden we're in this valley down here. Currently, compared to 2.5 million new workers every year, we have 400 to 500,000 new workers through Gen X, and then through Generation Alpha, which is apparently, I guess, will be the new name for the next, through probably 2035 or 2040. That's going to be pretty consistent because our birth rate, again, in the US collapsed. We went from 2.4 to 1.6%, or 1.6 babies per family from 2.5. So the fertility rate fell. That was covered up for years by two factors: immigration and women entering the workforce. So between 1950 and 2020, there were the participation rate of women doubled. It used to be in 1950, only 1 out of 3 women worked. In 2020, almost 2 out of 3 women worked, almost a 30% increase. So we masked that. So there was a lot of women coming into the workforce. Immigration was high. So we had a lot of immigrants coming in that were supporting that. And we still had all the baby boomers were still working. The millennials were still working. We had Gen X and then Gen Z coming in the workforce, and even some what we call veterans, traditionalists, those born before 1945. So through the last 20 years, when people say, oh, yeah, we heard this before, yeah, you did. And we've lived through it, but there was a lot more dynamics going on. Currently, we have very small population, that 400,000 Gen Z coming into the workplace every year. We don't have it in the US. We virtually have no immigration, very, very slow, especially in a lot of the frontline jobs and the jobs that people are looking for people to hire. And the baby boomers are exiting finally. I mean, the baby boomers are, some of them almost 80 years old. So they're either not able to work, they're finally choosing to retire. 1.5 million baby boomers died because of the pandemic. So there's a loss of baby boomers, no immigration, not a lot of new people coming into workforce, and we still have jobs.